They called it the last great battleship duel in history. Two mighty navies, steel giants armed to the teeth. But in October 1944, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the US Navy unleashed a weapon Japan never saw coming, one that would change naval warfare forever. As Admiral Kurita's fleet advanced through the Surigao Strait, they expected a fight with other battleships. What they got was a slaughter. This is the story of the last time battleships faced off, of a secret weapon decades ahead of its time, and how a single engagement in a narrow Philippine channel marked the end of the battleship era. This is the last duel. By 1944, Japan's navy was desperate. The Allies had taken back island after island. The Philippines were next. If Japan lost them, it would lose its last line of defense before the home islands. So the Japanese launched Operation Shogo, a massive naval counterattack. 3 separate forces would converge to crush the American invasion at Leyte. One of those forces, Center Force, led by Admiral Takeo Kurita, was built around the largest battleship ever constructed, Yamato. With her and other heavy hitters like Nagato and Haruna, the Japanese hoped to punch through the center of the US. To do so, they had to pass through the Surigao Strait. Waiting for them was a trap. Rear Admiral Jesse Oldendorf had lined up 6 US battleships across the narrow waters, forming a classic crossing the T, the most deadly formation in naval warfare. But the real killer wasn't the battleships. It was what hit them before they even arrived. As Kurita's fleet entered the strait, the first strike didn't come from big guns. It came from the shadows. American PT boats, small, fast, and nearly invisible at night, began launching torpedoes. While they scored only minor hits, they sowed chaos, broke formations, and lit the Japanese up for what came next. Then the destroyers moved in. In coordinated waves, US destroyers charged directly at battleships 10 times their size. Torpedoes streaked through the water, smashing into Fuso and Yamashiro. The Japanese ships returned fire, but in the darkness and confusion, they couldn't stop the onslaught. Fuso exploded, broke in half, and vanished beneath the waves. Yamashiro was next, burning and crippled. These attacks weren't just brave, they were surgical. The US Navy had mastered night fighting, radar-controlled targeting, coordinated assault patterns. Technology and training had made even the smallest vessels deadly, and by the time the battleships opened up, there wasn't much left to shoot at. At dawn, the American battle line opened fire. USS West Virginia, using cutting-edge radar fire control, fired the first salvos from over 20,000 yards. Shells screamed across the sky, smashing into what was left of the Japanese column. The US formation included 6 battleships, many of which had been damaged at Pearl Harbor and rebuilt. Now they stood reborn in formation. West Virginia, California, Tennessee, Maryland, Mississippi, and Pennsylvania. In just minutes, it was over. Yamashiro sank under relentless fire. Mogami, a cruiser in the formation, was heavily damaged and later scuttled. Destroyer Sagumo went down with all hands. The battle had lasted barely an hour. It was the last time in history that battleships would duel each other with gunfire. But the US secret weapon wasn't just technology. It was integration, radar, torpedoes, destroyer tactics, air recon, all working in perfect sequence to deliver one of the most lopsided naval victories in history. Admiral Oldendorf later said, "We completed the greatest ambush." For Japan, it was a disaster. They never again fielded a fleet that large, and for battleships, it was the end of an era. Rear Admiral Jesse Oldendorf, commanding the American defense at Surigao Strait, had studied naval warfare for decades. But this was different. He knew he didn't need brute strength. He needed perfect coordination. Oldendorf's plan was simple. Let the smaller ships, PT boats and destroyers, wound and disorient the Japanese. Then let the big guns finish what was left. And it worked perfectly. Oldendorf later remarked that he had executed what every naval officer dreams of. A textbook crossing of the T, where his ships could fire all their guns broadside, while the enemy could only respond with forward turrets. It was ancient naval theory brought to brutal life, powered by modern radar and real-time communications. For the Japanese sailors, the experience was apocalyptic. Their charts didn't account for the American ambush. Their radar was primitive compared to the US systems, and their formations were shattered before they even reached the main line. Survivors from Yamashiro reported blinding flashes, screaming metal, and the eerie silence that followed as the battleship rolled and sank. Few made it out. For the Imperial Navy, Surigao was one of many shocks during Leyte Gulf. But this one hit hardest. It was humiliation delivered by ships they believed were already obsolete. They had expected to fight battleships. They hadn't expected to be outclassed by destroyers in the dark. Surigao Strait marked the end of battleship supremacy, but also the evolution of American naval doctrine. By combining intelligence, radar, electronic warfare, and aggressive tactics, the US Navy showed it was no longer fighting. It was inventing how wars would be fought for the next 50 years. After the war, many of the American battleships involved were scrapped or turned into museums, but their legacy lives on, not in steel, but in strategy. Modern naval engagements are still taught using Surigao as a case study, how to trap, confuse, isolate, and overwhelm a superior enemy force. In this final duel, America didn't just win with firepower, it won with foresight. The Battle of Surigao Strait showed the future of warfare wasn't steel giants. It was speed, coordination, and technology. The battleship, once the king of the seas, had been dethroned by something smaller, smarter, faster. Survivors of the battle spoke of the sheer firepower, the confusion, the glow of burning ships in the pre-dawn haze. It was like watching history burn away. Today, few remember the last great battleship duel. It's overshadowed by Midway, by the atom bomb, by the endgame in Tokyo Bay. But Surigao was where the old world ended. It was the last breath of battleship glory, and the first chapter in a new kind of war. If you want more stories of hidden weapons, lost duels, and moments that changed everything, subscribe, like, and drop a comment with the next naval mystery or forgotten battle you want us to uncover. Thanks for watching.